This worksheet is going to combine what you know about positives and negatives and what you know about fractions. We're going to start out with multiplying and dividing with negatives and fractions. So for instance, if we have negative 5/12 times 4/25. The only thing that's changed about that problem is that there's a negative out in front. But let's just say these were whole numbers. If you had negative 5 times positive 4, what kind of answer would you get? You would get a negative answer. So we're just going to multiply these two fractions like normal, but we're going to make sure that our answer is negative. Follows the same rules as integers. Now, to do the multiplication, just a reminder, we would reduce as much as we can. So 25 is 5 times 5, and 5 is 1 times 5, so we can reduce out our 5s. 12 is 3 times 4, and 4 is 1 times 4, so we can reduce out our 4s. Now on the top we have a 1 and a 1, so 1 times 1 is 1. And in the denominator we have a 3 and a 5. 3 times 5 is 15, making sure we include that negative, and we're done with the problem. Division is very similar. If we have negative 3/8 divided by, let's make this one a negative this time. We have a negative divided by a negative. They're fractions. The way we divide fractions is we find the reciprocal of the divisor, which is the second number. So we would treat it the same way. That's a negative. We would turn this into multiplication, and this would be the reciprocal, like that. Now we're back up to following the same process we followed up here. This example is a negative times a negative, and we know that our answers, when we're dealing with a negative times a negative, we know our answer will be a positive. So we want to reduce. 8 and 24 share an 8, so 1 times 8, and 24 is 3 times 8. So I can reduce out my 8s, leaving me with a 3 and a 3 in the numerator, which 3 times 3 is 9. And in the denominator, 1 times 1. All we have down there are 1s. So we get 1. So simplified, 9 over 1 is just 9. My answer, again, is positive because I have a negative times a negative, or a negative divided by a negative. Final answer, positive 9. Always thinking about those signs. Now with adding and subtracting, it's a little bit more important paying attention to those signs as you go along. So if you have a 3/5 minus a 9/10, what you want to do is get a common denominator so that your denominator is set. You can't cancel anything, you can't do anything like that because this is adding and subtracting. So change gears, you need the common denominator. Now in this case, 5 goes into 10, so we can use 10 as our common denominator. Now I would encourage you, we're going to get a common denominator. We need to change that to a 10. But I'm going to kind of do it on the side and copy it over here, so I'm going sideways. You'll see in a second why. This right here, if I were going to change 3/5 into a 10, I multiplied that by 2, right? So I have to multiply the top by 2, which gives me 6/10. So this number right here is really 6/10. This one is already a 10, so minus 9/10. Now, when we add and subtract, the bottom, the denominator, is 10. It always is 10. So we're just going to put a big line and put a 10 down there because we know the bottom. What we don't know is we don't know what's happening in the numerator. So this sign is what you do with those top numbers. 6 minus 9. Now, if they were mixed numbers, we could borrow, but we have nowhere to borrow from. So all we can do is our integer addition, 6 minus 9. Some of you would see that as 6 plus a negative 9, still over 10. Different signs, so we subtract 9 minus 6, which is 3. Still a 10 in the bottom. But I had more negatives, right? More negatives. So my answer is negative. This is the final. If it's negative, you should either put it up in the numerator or out in front of the fraction. Do not put your negative in the denominator. Okay, so let's look at another one and see if we can do this one just like that one we just did. I'm going to work with those signs. We need a common denominator, which in the case of 3 and 4, the common denominator is 12. So we're going to take 2/3 and we're going to change it into 12s. And we're going to take 3/4 and we're going to change it into 12s. So some people do it in the problem, some people on the side, but let's keep it going sideways, not up and down. This is just our work. So this is times 4, so this is times 4, that's an 8. So I'm going to replace this with 8 12s minus, and then I'm going to replace this with times 3, 9 12s. Then when I'm looking at it, the 12s are going to remain the same. The denominator is definitely a 12. What you want to do is just take these numbers and the signs, so the numerators along with their signs, and then work that problem. So if we have 8 minus a negative 9, add the opposite, over 12. That gives us 17 over 12, which is our final answer. Since we didn't start with mixed numbers, we don't really need to change that to a mixed number. If you were to change it, 12 goes in there one time with 5 left over, so 1 and 5/12, but there's no reason to. This is reduced and it's fine. You didn't start with mixed numbers. You don't necessarily have to end with mixed numbers. One more example, just to go over this a last time before you hit your worksheet. If we have negative 1/4 and we're adding it to 3/8, the common denominator here, again we're adding the common denominator, is going to be 8. So this one's already set, but this one needs to change to an 8. So 1/4 is equal to how many 8s? That's what you're asking yourself. So you had to double it, or times it by 2. That gives us a 2 on the top. So I could replace this with 2 8s plus the 3 8s. Remember, the bottom is going to stay the same once you have them the same. So just put your 8 down there and write the numerator with all the signs. There's your numerator with all the signs. Negative 2 plus 3. They have different signs, so you're going to subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1. I have more positives, so it's positive 1 over 8. Check to make sure it's reduced, and you're done with the problem. Now, this is just practice. This isn't a test, so when you go to do your worksheet, you have 9 problems. Feel free, if you have any questions at all, to ask a tutor or an instructor for help. Enter it in when you're done.